Hello, friends. Welcome back to Book Demystified once again. And today, we are going to discuss about the book Scarcity by Sendhil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir. Now, let me ask you something that might hit a little too close to home. Have you ever noticed that when you're broke, you seem to make the worst financial decisions? Like, when your bank account is running on fumes, suddenly you're buying expensive takeout instead of cooking at home, or you're paying late fees because you forgot to pay bills, or you're taking out payday loans that you know are going to destroy you financially. And then when you have more money, you look back and think, why did I do those obviously stupid things? Here's what's really messed up about this. Our society tells us that poor financial decisions are the reason people stay poor. We're constantly hearing about personal responsibility, better budgeting, making smarter choices. But what if I told you that the entire premise is backwards? What if being poor actually makes you worse at making financial decisions, not the other way around? What if scarcity itself, whether it's money, time, or anything else we need, literally changes how our brains work and forces us into a cycle of bad decisions that we can't think our way out of? That's exactly what these two brilliant researchers discovered, and I'm telling you, this book is going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about poverty, decision-making, and why people stay stuck in difficult situations. Mullainathan from Harvard and Shafir from Princeton spent years studying the psychology of scarcity, and what they found is both heartbreaking and hopeful. They proved that scarcity doesn't just mean you have less resources, it actually hijacks your brain and makes you dumber, more impulsive, and less capable of making the exact decisions you need to make to get out of scarcity. But here's why I'm so excited to share this with you today. Understanding how scarcity works isn't just about having compassion for people in difficult situations, though that's important too. This research applies to all of us. Whether you're stressed about money, overwhelmed with work deadlines, trying to manage your time, or feeling like you never have enough of anything, scarcity is probably affecting your decision-making in ways you don't even realize. And once you understand how it works, you can start protecting yourself from its worst effects. Let me tell you about something that happened to my friend Marcus last year that perfectly illustrates this concept. Marcus is a smart guy, college-educated, good job as a software developer here in Austin, definitely not someone you'd think of as financially irresponsible. But he went through a rough divorce, had to pay for 2 households while dividing assets, and suddenly found himself living paycheck to paycheck for the first time in his adult life. And that's when the weird decisions started. He'd drive 20 minutes out of his way to save $3 on gas, burning more than $3 worth of gas and wasting an hour of his time. He'd skip buying groceries and end up ordering expensive delivery food because he didn't want to spend $50 at once, even though he'd end up spending twice that much meal by meal. He'd avoid opening his credit card statements because seeing the balance stressed him out, which led to missed payments and late fees. None of this made logical sense, and Marcus knew it didn't make sense, but he couldn't seem to stop himself.
What Marcus was experiencing is what the authors call scarcity mind, a specific mental state that occurs when we feel like we don't have enough of something important. And here's the crucial insight that changes everything. Scarcity mind isn't a character flaw or a sign of weakness. It's a predictable, measurable psychological response that happens to everyone, regardless of intelligence, education, or moral character. The authors proved this through dozens of experiments, and the results are absolutely mind-blowing. In one study, they took farmers in India and gave them IQ tests during 2 different seasons, right before harvest when money was tight, and right after harvest when they had cash from selling their crops. Same people, same tests, just different financial situations. The results? The exact same individuals scored significantly lower on cognitive tests when they were experiencing financial scarcity. We're talking about a difference equivalent to losing an entire night's sleep or being a mild alcoholic. Scarcity literally made them temporarily less intelligent. Think about what this means for a second. It's not that poor people make bad decisions because they're less intelligent. It's that the stress and mental load of scarcity actually reduces cognitive capacity in the moment when good decision-making is most crucial. It's like trying to solve complex math problems while someone is screaming in your ear and flashing bright lights in your eyes. Your brain simply doesn't have the bandwidth to think clearly about long-term consequences when it's completely occupied with immediate survival. This completely changed how I understand my own behavior during stressful periods. A few years ago, I was working on a major project with an impossible deadline, basically working 16-hour days for 3 weeks straight. During that period, I made some of the dumbest decisions of my life. I'd spend $40 on Uber Eats instead of taking 10 minutes to make a sandwich because I felt like I didn't have time to think about food. I'd buy duplicate things because I couldn't remember what I already had at home. I'd agree to social commitments I didn't have time for because I couldn't think clearly about my schedule. At the time, I chalked it up to being tired and overwhelmed. But after reading this book, I realized I was experiencing time scarcity, and it was affecting my brain the same way financial scarcity affects decision-making. My cognitive resources were so focused on managing the immediate crisis that I had no mental bandwidth left for making good decisions about anything else. The authors call this tunneling, when scarcity forces your attention so narrowly on immediate needs that you can't see the bigger picture or plan for the future. Here's where this gets really important for understanding American society. We've built systems that actually make scarcity worse instead of better. Take payday loans, for example. These businesses specifically target people who are experiencing financial scarcity when their decision-making capacity is at its lowest. They offer immediate relief from the tunnel vision of not having enough money right now, but they trap people in cycles of debt that are almost impossible to escape from. It's not that people who use payday loans are financially irresponsible. It's that scarcity has literally reduced their ability to calculate the long-term costs versus the short-term benefits.
The same pattern shows up everywhere once you know what to look for. Late fees on bills, overdraft charges from banks, rent-to-own furniture stores, buy now, pay later schemes. All of these services make money by exploiting the predictable decision-making patterns of people experiencing scarcity. It's like a predatory ecosystem that profits from the psychological effects of not having enough. But it's not just about money. The authors show how scarcity works the same way with time, attention, social connection, and any other resource we value. Have you ever noticed how when you're super busy, you seem to become less efficient? When you feel like you don't have enough time, you start making poor time management decisions that actually waste more time. That's time scarcity creating the same tunneling effect that financial scarcity creates with money decisions. I see this all the time with working parents who are juggling careers, kids, and households. They're so focused on getting through each day that they can't step back and see patterns or make strategic decisions that would actually make their lives easier. They'll drive across town to save $10 on something while paying $50 for childcare. Or they'll skip exercise to save an hour, even though exercise would give them more energy and focus. It's not that they can't do math. It's that scarcity is forcing their attention so narrowly on immediate needs that they can't see the bigger picture. One of the most powerful concepts in this book is what the authors call bandwidth. Basically, your mental capacity to process information, make decisions, and control impulses. Everyone has limited bandwidth, but scarcity uses up a huge chunk of it just managing immediate needs and worries. This leaves less bandwidth available for everything else, which is why people experiencing scarcity seem to have worse self-control, worse planning abilities, and worse decision-making across all areas of life. The research on this is incredible. They've shown that just thinking about financial problems reduces cognitive performance on completely unrelated tasks. In one experiment, they had people imagine their car needed expensive repairs. The people with lower incomes showed significant drops in cognitive function just from thinking about this scenario, while higher income people were basically unaffected. The worry and mental calculations required to figure out how to handle a financial emergency literally used up mental resources that would otherwise be available for clear thinking. Hey, if you're enjoying our free book summaries and want to support what we do, there are a few easy ways to help. You can subscribe to the channel, become a member, or grab the book using our affiliate link in the description. And if you'd like to go a step further, you can also leave a tip via PayPal or UPI, the links below. Every bit of support helps us keep creating valuable content for you.
Now, here's where this gets really interesting. The authors found that scarcity can actually make people better at certain types of decisions in the short term. When you're focused intensely on one problem, you can become incredibly efficient at solving that specific problem. They call this focus dividend. The intense attention that scarcity creates can lead to remarkable creativity and resourcefulness. People experiencing scarcity often come up with solutions that people with abundance would never think of because they don't need to. I saw this firsthand when my sister was going through a financially tight period after starting her own business. She became incredibly creative about stretching every dollar, making gourmet meals from basic ingredients, finding free entertainment options I never knew existed, negotiating better deals on everything from phone bills to insurance. In some ways, she was making better financial decisions during that tight period than she had when money was more abundant, because she was paying intense attention to every expense. But here's the catch. That same intense focus that creates short-term efficiency also creates long-term problems. When you're tunneling on immediate needs, you can't invest in things that would improve your situation over time. You can't take classes that would improve your earning potential because you need to work extra hours right now. You can't buy quality items that would save money long-term because you need every dollar for immediate expenses. You can't take time for self-care or relationship maintenance because there are always more urgent things demanding attention. The authors describe this as the scarcity trap, a situation where the psychological effects of scarcity actually perpetuate the conditions that create scarcity. It's not just that being poor is expensive, though that's certainly true. It's that the mental state of scarcity makes it almost impossible to make the decisions that would lead to abundance. Your brain is so focused on surviving today that it can't plan for thriving tomorrow. This shows up in ways that go far beyond money. I know people who are so busy at work that they can't take time to update their skills or look for better jobs, even though they're miserable and underpaid. I know parents who are so focused on managing daily chaos that they can't step back and create systems that would make their lives easier. I know students who are so stressed about immediate assignments that they can't develop good study habits that would reduce their stress long-term. One of the most important insights from this research is that scarcity is context-dependent, not character-dependent. The same person who makes excellent decisions in one area of life might make terrible decisions in another area where they're experiencing scarcity. A successful CEO who's great with money might make awful relationship decisions if they're experiencing social scarcity. A loving parent who's amazing with their kids might struggle with financial decisions if they're experiencing money scarcity. This really hit home for me when I thought about different periods of my own life. When I was in college and had very little money, I made some objectively bad financial decisions. Eating out when I couldn't afford it, buying things on credit cards, not taking advantage of free resources that were available to me. But during that same period, I was incredibly disciplined about my time and studies because I felt abundant in those areas. It wasn't that I was bad at making decisions, it was that financial scarcity was using up mental bandwidth that made good financial decisions much harder. The authors also explore how our modern environment creates artificial scarcity in ways that our brains aren't equipped to handle. We're constantly bombarded with messages about things we don't have through advertising, social media, news cycles that focus on crisis and shortage. Our brains respond to this artificial scarcity the same way they respond to real scarcity, which means we're walking around in a constant state of scarcity mind even when we objectively have enough resources.
Think about how social media makes us feel scarce about everything: time, money, experiences, relationships, achievements. You scroll through Instagram and suddenly feel like you don't have enough of anything because you're comparing your real life to everyone else's highlight reel. That feeling of scarcity triggers the same psychological responses as actual shortage, which means you start making worse decisions even when you're not actually lacking resources. I've noticed this in my own social media use. When I spend a lot of time on platforms like LinkedIn or Instagram, I start feeling anxious about my career, my lifestyle, my achievements, even when things are going well in my actual life.
That artificial scarcity created by comparison makes me more impulsive, less satisfied with what I have, and more likely to make decisions based on keeping up with others rather than what actually makes sense for my situation. One of the most practical sections of the book deals with what the authors call scarcity proofing, designing systems and environments that account for the fact that scarcity will sometimes impair your decision-making. Instead of relying on willpower and good judgment when you're stressed, you create automatic systems that work even when your bandwidth is compromised. For finances, this might mean setting up automatic transfers to savings, so you don't have to decide whether to save money when you're feeling financially pressed. It might mean using apps that round up purchases and save the change, so you're building wealth without having to think about it. It might mean having a separate account for bills that gets automatically funded, so you don't accidentally spend bill money on other things when you're in scarcity mode. For time management, scarcity proofing might mean batching similar tasks together, so you don't have to make multiple decisions throughout the day. It might mean preparing healthy meals in advance, so you don't end up ordering expensive takeout when you're busy. It might mean setting up systems that automatically handle routine tasks, so your bandwidth is preserved for more important decisions. I started implementing these ideas after reading the book, and the difference has been incredible. I set up automatic savings transfers so I don't have to decide whether to save money each month. It just happens. I batch all my errands into one trip per week so I don't waste time and mental energy on multiple trips. I prepare meals in advance when I have abundant time and mental bandwidth, so I don't make poor food decisions when I'm stressed or busy. The key insight is that good decisions are easier to make when you have abundance of time, money, mental energy, whatever. So you use your abundant moments to set up systems that will protect you during scarce moments. It's like wearing a seatbelt. You don't put it on because you're planning to crash, but because you know that if something unexpected happens, your decision-making ability will be compromised, and you need systems in place to protect you. Another fascinating aspect of this research is how it explains seemingly irrational behaviors that make perfect sense once you understand scarcity psychology. For example, why do people experiencing financial hardship sometimes spend money on small luxuries that seem frivolous? The authors explain that when you're constantly depriving yourself of everything, small indulgences become necessary for psychological survival. That expensive coffee or candy bar isn't just a purchase. It's a brief moment of feeling human and worthy of nice things.
This really changed my perspective on judgment about other people's financial choices. It's easy to look at someone buying name-brand groceries with food stamps and think they're being irresponsible. But if you understand scarcity psychology, you realize that small moments of dignity and normalcy might be essential for psychological well-being when everything else in life feels restricted and difficult. The mental health cost of constant deprivation might outweigh the small financial cost of occasional treats. The authors also address how scarcity affects parenting and family dynamics. Parents who are stressed about money, time, or other resources often become less patient, less emotionally available, and more focused on managing immediate crises rather than nurturing long-term development in their children. This isn't because they love their children less or are worse parents. It's because scarcity is consuming the mental bandwidth that good parenting requires. I've seen this pattern in families I know. When parents are financially stressed, they tend to focus more on rules, discipline, and immediate behavior management rather than the kind of patient teaching and emotional support that helps children develop into thriving adults. When parents are time scarce, they tend to prioritize efficiency over connection, which can impact family relationships even when everyone's basic needs are being met. Understanding this doesn't solve the problem, but it does help explain why simply telling stressed parents to be more patient or spend more quality time with your kids isn't helpful advice. The issue isn't that they don't know what good parenting looks like, it's that scarcity is using up the mental resources that good parenting requires.
As we near the end, let me share what I think are the 3 most important takeaways from this groundbreaking research. First, scarcity isn't just about having less stuff. It's a psychological state that fundamentally changes how your brain processes information and makes decisions. This means that solutions to scarcity-related problems need to address the psychological aspects, not just provide more resources. Simply giving someone more money won't necessarily help if they're still operating in scarcity mind. Second, we need to stop attributing poor decisions during scarce times to character flaws or lack of intelligence. When someone makes bad financial decisions while struggling financially, or poor time management decisions while overwhelmed with work, or unhealthy choices while dealing with stress, they're not displaying moral weakness. They're displaying normal human psychology under difficult circumstances. Understanding this can help us have more compassion for others and for ourselves during difficult periods.
Third, the most effective way to deal with scarcity is to plan for it in advance. Use your abundant moments to create systems, habits, and environments that will support good decision-making during scarce moments. Don't rely on willpower and good judgment when your bandwidth is compromised. Rely on automatic systems that work regardless of your mental state. But here's the thing that gives me hope about this research. Understanding how scarcity works gives us power over it. When you recognize that you're operating in scarcity mind, you can pause before making major decisions. You can ask yourself whether this choice is being driven by tunnel vision or clear thinking. You can reach out for outside perspectives when your own judgment might be compromised. You can be gentler with yourself about past decisions that seemed obviously wrong in hindsight, but made sense given your mental state at the time. Look, this book won't magically solve anyone's financial problems or eliminate stress from your life, but it will give you a completely different framework for understanding why smart people sometimes make seemingly dumb decisions, why poverty is so hard to escape, and why willpower alone isn't enough to solve problems created by scarcity. Mullainathan and Shafir didn't just write a book about poor people. They wrote a book about human psychology under pressure, and that applies to all of us. The bottom line is this: scarcity changes your brain in predictable ways, and those changes often perpetuate the very conditions that created scarcity in the first place. But once you understand how this psychological trap works, you can start designing your life in ways that account for it. You can create systems that protect you during scarce times. Have compassion for yourself and others who make difficult decisions under pressure. And maybe even help break some of the cycles that keep people stuck in scarcity. This isn't just about money, though that's certainly part of it. This is about understanding one of the fundamental ways that human psychology works under stress, and using that understanding to create more effective solutions to some of our most persistent personal and social problems. Trust me, once you start seeing the world through the lens of scarcity psychology, you'll never think about decision-making, poverty, or human behavior the same way again.